It gives me great pleasure to kick off the conference and introduce our keynote speaker, Tony Pace, former CMO of Subway and current CEO and founder of Cerebral Graffiti. Welcome, Tony. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You guys jumped a little bit ahead, or I jumped a sec. Could you guys, sorry about that. Okay, so yes, I am the former CMO of Subway. I'm also the outgoing chair of the ANA, and I'm reasonably conversant in marketing issues because of my long-standing and ongoing interactions with many of my colleagues in the marketing universe. So I have what I would consider some hopefully thought starters for you today. And my perspective is my own, but it's certainly been informed by discussions with those colleagues that I referred to. So the first thing I want to say, and it's really what I decided to title the presentation, is attribution is essential in the changing marketing landscape. I can tell you that not a conversation happens amongst senior marketers where people are going back and forth and saying what's working, what's not working. You'll have curious conversations around the notion that, gee, you know, if you read the popular press, email is a thing of the past and we should only be reaching many audiences via text messaging, and millennials don't look at emails and you should only be reaching them via text. And then you go out and you find that your best return on marketing investment actually continues to be email after all these years. Now, I'm not necessarily here to vouch for that as the best for everybody, but I think it probably, as somebody who spent time in the direct marketing space, it's really the list of people that you're reaching, because your email list is probably something that you've created on your own, and really it's, you know, first party data, if you will, and you can have a lot of confidence in it. So the name of my company is Cerebral Graffiti, and I think everybody in this room probably gets the cerebral part. It's very left brain, very, very logical, but there's also a part of marketing which is still creative. So I'm a marketer who believes that marketing is still art greatly informed by data and science. And you have to have a little bit of creativity there. And graffiti, as we all know, is kind of street art. And street art, in a way, can kind of stand out and make an impression on people, which it kind of sticks with them. And I'm going to talk a lot about impressions today and the potentially different value of different impressions. Now, in the comments that everybody was making as we were starting this morning, we started talking about conversion and we started talking about getting down into the purchase funnel. And one of the things that I think is a big issue, and I think all marketing ROI could probably do a better job on this, is thinking about branding and purchase funnel at the same time, right? So I would say that there's probably parallel galaxies. Yes, that's what that photo is supposed to show up there. Where one is kind of the purchase funnel, but the other one is kind of the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about the brand. And they're not exactly lined up with one another. A lot of people, when they start thinking about this, especially if you talk to the technology companies, you'll talk to the software engineers, and you know, engineers have to be very logical and everything's got to be step A, step B, step C. Well, the brand only operates at the top of the purchase funnel, right? It's about awareness, because then I get awareness and I get some sort of shopping behavior, I get consideration, maybe I get sampling or trial, and eventually somebody plucks their money down. I think that that's probably the wrong way to look about things, and one of my wishes as a marketer, maybe it's a long way off, is maybe there's a way to put the brand more into all the discussion on return on investment. And think about it from a financial standpoint, right? So if you go to a company and they're about to be acquired, some other company's paying probably some sort of premium for them. And in the accounting world, they'll say, well, that premium is based on goodwill, right? And what is that goodwill based on? Well, it's based on the power of our brand. Well, with all due respect to the finance guys, you know, they kind of do this about that to make sure that the numbers work, so they go ahead and do the acquisition. But there hasn't been enough marketing work or analytic work, frankly, about the value of a brand and how that is impacted by all the various influences that are out there on behalf of a brand. So these are my two great kids. And the reason I show them is because even though my wife and I are fortunate to have some lovely big screen TVs in our house, This is how they prefer consuming information and entertainment, right? The device is central to their lives, right? And that creates a lot more questions about all of the things that marketers want to measure and you guys want to find attribution for in terms of what's going to happen with them. So my son would much rather watch old Seinfeld on his phone than go to any of the various services that we have that they can just click on and watch it on the big screen. It's a more personal experience. He can have his headphones in. Dad won't bother him about if his homework's done, right? This is a very different behavior than very recent times. Now, there's nothing new in saying that, but when you think about all the content that they're consuming because the device is ever present, the role of marketing communications, frankly, is very different. My wife is also in the marketing universe, and our kids are very well aware of that, but the constant complaint from them is, Dad, Mom, can't you do anything about all these silly ads that are poking in from the side or on the bottom? I just want to go see the content. So you think about kind of a passion point for mine, you think about the digital media supply chain, and you think about everybody saying, I can insert your message here. Well, it frankly is making it a bad user experience for the end consumer. And you know, the premium publishers, frankly, there are too many intermediaries between them and the consumer. And the marketer is getting the blowback that I'm getting from my kids saying, you're the advertiser, so therefore it's your fault. I think that issue actually is a drag on the return on marketing investment in the digital space, and it frankly needs some addressing. And with all the great analytical minds we have in this room, I would love it if at some point, as an old A&A guy, if somebody come out and say that that kind of bad experience is having this kind of a negative influence on it, because frankly a lot of that's got to be cleaned up. And actually, let me go back to that. And one more thing, if in the recent past when I was selling foot-long sandwiches, I know I can create an awful lot more appetite appeal on a 60-inch screen than a 3-inch screen. And I think that that needs to be part of the discussion when people are going for attribution. So I was down in Rio, was fortunate to be there, was with a former client and now friend of mine, Dina Gerson from Coca-Cola, and we were walking into the basketball venue, and we saw this fellow from Argentina with a newsboy hat essentially made out of pieces of Coca-Cola cans that he had cut and put them together. So that's a side view of it, obviously. But he spoke pretty good English because my Spanish is not all that good. But he really wanted to chat about how much he loved the Coca-Cola brand. And he's not a paid ambassador for the brand, but clearly he's got a great love of the brand. And that brand thing is very, very powerful. Now, if you look at the marketing mix modeling, this guy probably doesn't jump out as being highly valued, right? But he probably has a value not only as a consumer of the brand and how much of the Coca-Cola beverage he consumes during the course of the year, but also he's obviously a fan of the brand. So when you're in a venue like the Olympics, he's not seeing a lot of people, but he's actually probably influencing some. I would say that as Dina actually said to me, I'd love to clone this guy and have 1 million of them walking around because he's of value to the brand. I know this is a hard thing to get an assessment on, but these kind of things are more and more in the conversation because of social media and all of the emerging ways to communicate. I'm going to share one other Coca-Cola related story from a few years ago. So I helped create the company called Momentum, which is part of Interpublic. And way back when, we were responsible for all of the local activation around the Olympic torch relay in 1996 as the torch wound its way through the United States to go to Atlanta where those games were. And we had about 75 people on the road, and they were up every morning early, putting up displays in supermarkets and making sure the mayor of the local town where they were doing the midday ceremony would do something. And the kids worked really hard. And I went out a couple times to meet them on the road to kind of encourage them because it was 7 days a week, 20 plus hours a day. And when they finally came to Manhattan, we were going to do a big event for them that night. So I decided to go up to the northern reaches of Manhattan, up to out by the George Washington Bridge, and back in 1996, that was not such a great neighborhood. And I had my little polo shirt on that said Coca-Cola Olympic Torch Relay. And I was walking through the streets up there, and in the span of about 6 or 8 blocks, 3 kids came up to me. They were probably between the ages of 8 and 15. And all of them said a slight variation of the notion of, "Mister, thank you very much for bringing the torch to our neighborhood, because nothing good ever happens here." So in addition to running Momentum at that time, I was also at McCann Erickson. And I went back to my friends at McCann Media, who were very smart guys and very analytically based. And I said, so how many television impressions do I have to have those kids see to equal the one impression that Coke actually brought the Olympic torch to their neighborhood? And that was something that they were going to remember for a long time. I know attribution of that is exceedingly hard, but I would challenge you to say that that ought to be a focus going forward, because you really want to understand what cements a brand in somebody's mind, or what changes a perception, or what moves them to a new perception, because that's the value marketers are looking for. Here's another little thing that I did, because I've got my phone and I take pictures all the time. So this is the Goodyear Blimp. Goodyear Blimp's been around sporting events forever, right? What did they do? Well, you know, the Goodyear Blimp would be at the best and the biggest sporting events over the course of years. What they ended up doing is they decided to do a hashtag Blimpworthy, and wherever you spotted the blimp, you could say this event that I'm at, because I'm taking a selfie and posting on social media, is really worthy enough of getting the attention of the blimp being there. Created a tremendous amount of value around that. Again, if you talk to the people that were familiar with this program, in the world of attribution, it was hard to get at the attribution of what that value was. In their bones, did they believe this worked, and would they do it again? Sure, but the attribution piece was hard. So I would suggest to you that we have, data everywhere, right? There's data all over the place. But at the end of the day, I would say that we're kind of data rich and insight poor. And yeah, that's a black hole, and everybody can say we have all this data. The question is, what's the actionable data? And more importantly, what's the hypotheses or hypothesis that I put my money behind when I have to make decisions about how we're going to market a brand going forward? So this also is a picture from down in Rio at the Olympic Park. And if you know anything about media in Brazil, there's a company called Globo, which, at least to a layman like me, is a near monopoly. But when you talk to the people at Globo about why they were doing such a big installation at the park, they said, well, we have to, because this is the biggest thing that we've ever done. Now, you had to buy media through them. I was like, well, couldn't you guys have spent less money? They're like, probably, but the Olympics deserved all this money being spent behind it. And finally, when we got to the discussion, it's like, well, we think that people are going to remember this. In other words, they're going to have a memory of the impression for a long time, whereas they might not remember some of the more standard programming we do, throughout the years. So I would say that the very fertile fields of marketing need some more cultivation. We need a real precise focus on the road ahead. And I know this may be a little bit controversial, but I think intelligent people can have discussions. You hear a lot about the technology of serving impressions, or proving that an impression was viewed by a human being versus a bot or something else. As a marketer, you're really thinking more about which impressions are retained and comprehended, and kind of create part of the brand memory, because that's what you think about. And I know when I talk to anybody who's in analytics or in research, and I say, what I really want is I want an MRI of a consumer's brain, and I can know exactly what triggered something in their mind, and I can know exactly what led them to feel better about brand A versus brand B. I know that's probably a ways out there, and it's kind of going from the consumer out versus the media entity or marketer in. But boy, would I love to get there. The reason I chose the Matterhorn is, at a point in time, that was the thing that nobody could climb. And even though there's a graveyard down at the bottom of the Matterhorn where the folks who have failed are buried, it is now successfully climbed by many people, and at a point in time, people would say that that wasn't possible. So me and all of my colleagues would say, aim high when looking for greater attribution. What are the things that actually really sat with a customer and made a certain brand part of what they wanted to purchase, and also made a brand rating a little bit higher than it may have been before. And frankly, we need to cross the bridge from served impressions to what are retained, and we need to find a way to attribute that. One other kind of Rio-based story. Have you guys seen this? You know who that is? Usain Bolt, right? Fastest man in the world, many Olympics over, right? Well, you're in Brazil, and thank goodness the Brazilian soccer team came back from a tough World Cup, and they actually won the gold medal in the games. So what does their best player Neymar do? In a great tip of the hat, he basically mimics Usain Bolt. So with great analytic minds like yourselves, how much was that worth for Usain Bolt and his brand, right? Here you are in one of the most populous countries in the world with a sport that they just proved they're great in, and Neymar could do no better thing than say, you know what, I want to tip my cap to the great Usain Bolt. So I know we don't have time for Q&A, and I've run a little bit long. I would suggest that I put the chart in for joy, because at the end of the day, when you throw out questions like you did, you can create anger and fear and all those emotions. But kind of like Riley in the great movie Inside Out, which we were able to work with when I was at Subway, when you work through those circumstances, hard as those questions are, you get to a place of joy because you've got greater attribution, and you can say with confidence, this is the marketing program that I know is going to work because I've been able to prove the attribution of previous efforts in this area. So thanks. I'd be happy to answer questions on Twitter or email. May not get to you right away, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And good luck with the conference. As a marketer, I could say it's very, very important that we are rapidly advancing attribution, analytics, and return on marketing investment. Thanks again.